Okay. So shall we start with our first lesson in our OOP? So I'll be okay. So this is the slide. Supposedly that this topic is on April 5 to 16, but suddenly we have to move it um, for the difficulties that we met during the first week of April. So who among you here um, what you expect about object-oriented programming? So did you have already idea what is object-oriented programming? Anyone would have an idea? So last time you learned programming. So right now, we have another two words, okay, included, okay, karon object-oriented programming. Okay, so but before that we were going to talk about, I asked you because I want to know if you already have an idea, if you have already searched it on the internet and find an idea about what is object-oriented programming. So since no one have a feedback, so we will continue. So at the end of this lesson, okay, you, the students should be able to, okay, discuss the main ideas of object-oriented programming, namely abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism. So these are the ideas why there is an object-oriented programming. So this is the core ideas of object-oriented programming. So it is abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism. So later on, we will talk about what are those for. Next is identify the parts of a class and an object. So right now, maybe you don't have any idea about what is a class and what is an object. So later on, you can identify the parts of it. Okay, and then construct an object through classes. So later on, you can do that, constructing objects through classes, and focus the importance of object-oriented programming. Okay, so let's further ado, we will start what is object-oriented programming. Okay, so programming is just like building a house, right? So if you want to build a house like what we see on the screen, first what we're going to do, because in the first place, we cannot create, we will just not, when we sleep and then after we sleep, we wake up, we have already a house. So it is a process. So programming is also a process. So it's just building a house. So the end goal of having a program or making a program is an application. Okay. So in carpentry, okay, the end or goal maybe probably making a house, right? So as you can see on the screen, you have a beautiful native house. So what are the tools that they use and materials that use in building a house? So there are. So our carpenter has that tool. Okay, we have the basic hand tools that they use in making the house. So there are the tools. Okay, except of the materials. Okay, so you need the tools to build that one, because if you don't have the tools, you cannot cut the exact length of that wood, and you can also that design. So specific tools that will be used in building or achieving particular parts of the house. Okay, not necessarily that uh, all of these tools are used in each part of your house, but there are some parts of the house that being used on that, or these parts being used. So this is necessarily that kinahanglan siya every part of the house should be used. So naray parts house na to ang gamiton in specific. Okay? So that there are some also that ginagamit gid siya through entire, like nails, you cannot put together wood without nails, di ba? But you don't have to use all electric handrails for the entire house. There are some parts that needs to be drilled. Okay, but with the tools, you cannot achieve a house. Okay, but why? Because there's only the tools. All you need to do next is plan. Okay, you see the plan. What is your plan for your house? What is the design of your house? So that the specific tools that will be used on that particular um, part of the house will be um, maka generate ka. You can um, use a specific tool for that. So you need to have planning. Okay? So that is why, 'di ba, why I give you this illustration, because all of us has an idea on building a house, 'di ba? You cannot create a house without this tool, but also with the tool you cannot create this beautiful house without a plan. Plan and the tools may work together in order um, to have an finished product like this one. Okay, going back to the programming, these are the applications available on the app, on the Play Store or any. So we have Messenger, Clock, whatsoever available. That are applications that are available nowadays in the internet. We have a lot of applications, right? We have Facebook, we have YouTube, that are you going to that you use day to day. You have also used diba? Game applications. There are some that are using an application, banking application. So those applications use programming in order uh, to develop to deploy. So these are the programming constructs that you are that they are using. So that is common. You can use if statements, else if, else switch, while, do while, variables, data types. So we have um, arrays. So those are the tools that programmers have in order to develop an application. The same similar with my illustration a while ago about the house. You have the knowledge about the tools where and when to use it in order to build parts of the application. So not necessarily that all of these tools will be used always in the application, but each part of the application has a use of these. So now, since you have the knowledge about the tools of every needed in developing an application, so all we need to do next is the algorithm or the plan. Okay, because algorithm is an instruction to the computer what to do. So without algorithm, you cannot also produce an application because you don't know what is the specification of that application. What are the parts of it? What are the things needed? What are the things to do in that particular instruction? So the algorithm is also important. So if you have the tools, the mindset, or the you have the capability to use the tools, and if you don't have the capability for algorithm, you cannot develop an application. So must have a skill set of having an algorithm and also a skill set of familiarizing the tools. So the algorithm is a skill in giving instructions to the computer what to do. So every application has its own algorithm. Okay, so it's a plan to make the program works. Okay, so that is why this is what we call programming. Okay, now we will now move. So we will now move to programming paradigm. So basically, we have paradigm, which is we call it ways of making ways of doing programming. So way back in our first years and the first time that we enjoy making program through procedural programming. So procedural programming, you are giving instruction to the computer line by line. Okay, so in order to make instructions to the computer, you must put instruction from top to bottom, left, right. Okay, so it is in our programming paradigms. There are two main classification. First is the imperative programming paradigm. The second is the declarative programming paradigm. Okay, I will not focus about declarative programming paradigm because our main concern is object-oriented programming. So in object-oriented programming is um, classified in imperative programming paradigm. When you say imperative programming paradigms, you are using variables, data types. Okay, you set instructions plus the data. There is the data and there's the instruction. So that is you are setting it interdependently. So that is what we call imperative programming. So you have the data, you have the variables that holds the data, you have the logic that runs the program. So that we call imperative programming. So procedural is a kind of programming, the way of programming that all the data are being global and globally shared, and also it is used along files kana ganing in one file there is that particular instructions stored. So na siya diferensya when it comes to object-oriented programming. So to make it more sense, this is what we are going to do. We are going trying to learn. Okay, we have procedural oriented programming, or we have procedural programming. So global data, you store data like int num1, int num2, or string name. So it is global. So remember that in your programming we have functions or method, like in C++ we have int main, right? Int main. So we have functions int main. You can have a lot of functions aside from int main. So meaning all data globally can be accessed through functions, like, okay, and every function has its own local data. So a good example for that is this. Negros Oriental, okay, this is a province which has there is a governor and vice governor. So the scope of Negros Oriental is from Basay to Canlaon. Okay, so that when we say global data, like governor, his jurisdiction will will reach from Basay, yes, Basay ba na? Das or Bayawan ba na? Bayawan to Canlaon. So all of its power of a government will be implemented on that particular location or scope. So when we say local data, okay, in a province, in province of Negros Oriental, we have three districts. The first district from Bais to Canlaon, and we have the second district from Tanhay to Dumaguete Bana, and then we have third district. Every district has its own we call it this congressman, right? So the congressman is like example of a local data. There is a congressman in the first district, congressman of the second district, second congressman of the third district. All its powers is only intended with its own district, right? So that means that the power of the first district on sa ilahang mga kuan dito cannot be implemented on the second district. The same with the object procedural programming. So we have functions, we have series of instructions inside the functions, we have the local data intended on that function. So whatever the local data on the function 2 is not being implemented on the function 1. And also the function 3 is not, or whatever the local data of the function 3 is not intended for function 2. So that we call it dependent, you know? So whatever happens, okay, it's only this code will be affected if there is a problem. So usually, we don't even reach functions mango. That is why murag wala may idea about functions, di ba? Let me know if nakaabot mo functions during your programming series. So atuwa wala man takabot og functions. I only reach array. So going back for your first years, did you reach function? Can anybody? Hello? Can anybody? Hello? Nakaabot mo functions? Nakasalay mo functions? Okay, sige lang, wala pa daw. So make sure my illustration is like that one katulaging sa district. So it's on implementation of districts depends on the rule, 'di ba? Okay, the data on that particular function. So now we shift to object-oriented programming because of this problem. Why? Because there are some data, and in real world, there are some data on this function can be used on the function 2, or there are some data that can be used on function 3. So what happened? It is redundant because if there is a function or there is a data inside needed in function 2, you on the for example, function data needed on the function 2 uh, will be also used on function 3. They cannot be shared because that is local data. So what we're going to do is to repeat the codes in here just to get that data. So time consuming because you are going to repeat the codes. Second, redundancy of codes. It makes your line of codes much more bigger. Okay, if your line of codes it will have 1,000, 10,000 line of codes, it will affect also the file size of your document or your file. The more file you have, the more RAM needed and also the processes needed. So it makes your application lag, okay? Or, di ba? So as humans, we don't want to use applications that's being lag. So as a developer, we are concerning about the line of codes that we are going to produce to make the program much more efficient, much more working. So naabot si object-oriented programming to solve that issue in object procedural programming. Why? Going to object-oriented programming, it's considered as object. Okay? We say object. So in real world, we are object. No? You is an object, me is an object, everything we have around us is an object. So why not we implement object-oriented programming approach, object-oriented approach to programming? Okay, because object shares two common characteristics. So I will just that characteristics is data, which is the attributes, and functions are we call it behavior. All object has its own characteristics and behavior. So common na siya. And some objects in the real world has the same attributes and same behavior. So munang gikuha nila ang idea of object-oriented programming into a real world entity. Okay, so that is why in here, as you can see, we can directly um, use functions to functions because every function has its own data. So now you can you can directly reach functions to functions through object-oriented approach. As you can see here, if you need some data on this function, in this function, it's uh, interdependent. So meaning less codes that you are going to write, and also no redundant. Okay, assuming that there is an object. Okay, we have an object like employee, object employee. So an employee has its own data like name, age, okay, age, date of birth, place of address. Those are the data. And the functions of that employee may be register employee, add employee, delete employee, and search employee. Now on the function 2, it will uh, needs to have data of that employee. So instead of writing on the function 2 all the needed data for that employee, you will just use the data on the function 1 in here to use it. So that is the basic principle of object-oriented programming. So any questions so we can proceed? Itong nalibog. And okay, so we will expand it much more in here. So okay, we have here another example. We have here procedural business OOP, procedure-oriented programming. We have main program. We have functions here, functions here, functions here, functions here. Okay, so we have a lot of functions that are messed up, diba? So in here in object-oriented programming, all we hear is encapsulated. Okay, the data is secured also because it's being encapsulated. Also, we have here the data, all the functions as you can hear are interconnected. Pwede siya ma-interconnected. Dili compare ani that's have a lot of um, things to do in order uh, to benefit some function. So na siya. Okay, so any questions between comparing OOP and procedural? I know some of you still uh, have questions. Don't be shy to ask questions, guys. Okay, so wala question. So why object-oriented programming? Okay, so you can see we have objects in okay objects in real world. We have airplane that is an object. We have here and Fort Everest. Okay, it's also an object. We have here a bike. Okay, it's an object. We have a ball. It's an object. We have a human that is an object. You have the tree. That is an object. So can you see what is common of those objects? Let me isa may makatubag. What are the commons of this object? I already said it earlier. What are the what are the commons of the objects? Function. Okay. Another term for function is behavior. Okay, behavior. Every object has its own behavior. Okay. So another thing that is common on an object. Uh, Isa man may na ay available dire. Okay. So Senya, what is a common? Na siya Susenya, wala man. Susenya, are you there? Are you there? Si Rose Ann? Oh, Rose Ann? Kasi may volunteer. Wala yung volunteer. Si Kuan na lang, si Lado. Hello ga. Yes. Okay, very good. That is data. The data, or we call it attribute. Okay. So these are the commons in every object. We have, okay, we have characteristics or behavior. Okay. So characteristics and behavior. Like for example, a characteristic of an airplane is the size, the color, the capacity, the engine, the height, the weight, the model, the brand. Those are the characteristics. What are these? The behavior of that plane: start engine, brake, take off, landing. Those are the behaviors. So how this plane behave? So that is the function. So sometimes behavior in object oriented programming, we tend to use it functions or methods. Okay, methods or functions, and we have characteristics. We call it attributes or the data. Diba? The data. We can put the size. What are the size? The color. White, for example, capacity 10 seaters. You have engine whatsoever, height whatsoever, weight whatsoever. So these are the data or attributes. Those are the characteristics in each object. So this is the common of all objects. Okay, as you can see also in this one, okay, you have characteristics and behavior. We have the size again, the color, the capacity, engine, height, weight, model, and brand of this Everest, Ford Everest. So we have here behavior also. We have start engine, brake, accelerate, decelerate, stop engine. So now, if you are a programmer working on it in every object, you don't need to rewrite all of those things because there are just commons on this object. All we need to do is just to use that common and let the principle of object-oriented programming do its work. The principle of procedural programming is every application should have its own specific code. But in object-oriented programming, it's relying on the principles of object. If there is the same characteristics or behavior, you can use that one on your other object because you are basing on this as an object. You are focusing as an object. Okay, going for the bike, you have all these characteristics: the size, the color, the height, the weight, and model and brand. So you don't need na to the other characteristics. That's not necessary for the bike. Like a while ago we have engine, and bike don't have engine, so you are going to remove. And that will have the process of we call it the um, because there is a topic, another topic, subtopic of OOP, which is um, tawagan ni oy nalimot man sad noong ko eh. Kana ganing inheritance. Sorry for that. We have inheritance. We inherit kinds of object. So if in case that all of these objects are similar, we inherit that one to another particular object. So right now, since now we don't have engine, you don't include the engine for that. And also the behavior, we have brake, accelerate, and decelerate or pedal. That is the behavior of the bike. Okay, anyone can add some of the characteristics of a bike and behavior. Can anyone? Okay, so wala. Let me call kisa man be. Si Ulingay. Naka-idea to add characteristics of a bike? Oy, wala man si Olingay lagi. How about Balenya? Balenya, are you here? Are you there? Oh, can you add some of the characteristics of the bike? Sakto ra ba na natay size, naay color, naay height, naay weight, naay model, naay brand? Yeah? Na- Okay, how about behavior? Na kay madugang sa behavior? What makes sa may behavior sa bike? Hello? Okay. Hello? Well, anyone can add for the behavior? Ulawon mo pud mo kayo, oy. Unsa man? Pwede. We have quality. Pwede po siya og we have a bike. Naman tayo we have category of bike na tayo mount category. We have mountain bike, road bike, tapos tayo eco bike, di ba? So there are category of bikes. You can have category. Okay, pwede pod quality. Unsa man siya na quality katong unsa man. First class, second class, third class. Okay. Okay, thank you. So another one, we have object, we have a takraw ball, we have a size again, the size of that one, the color, we have yellow, the height, the weight, the model, the brand. Okay. What are also napabaylatay kadugang sa characteristics. Okay. About the behavior, you have to bounce, to roll. Okay. Wala man dyan ang bola, di ba? Imong i-bounce, roll, o sa mo, wala na. Okay, so about the human. And okay, characteristics and behavior for human. You have the size, the color, the height, the weight, the name, the address. You can have a lot of thing here. Can you add someone? Can you add something for the characteristics? Yes, good age. How about sa may lain? Na naman tay address? Na naman tay address diri oh? Status, that correct. Sta- Sa to? Sa to? Gender, that's good. Birth date, correct. Race. Okay, unsay energy? Energy? Ener energy, energy level. Uh, behavior na ibutang na to, characteristics, unsa man. Characteristics, gwapo ba or dili, sa na. Okay, complexity. Okay, so may lain. Sa may tabuan na. First, what is that? Birth of day, the date of birth. Okay, so there are many characteristics of a human. So remember, the human, the human, these characteristics describes this human. Diba? Every characteristics describe a particular human, right? So to be distinct to each everyone, diba? So there is a topic on your object or no, a database. If you don't forget about that, we have to how to be distinct to one another. That data to be distinct to one another. So for example, students. There are many students in our zoo. So based on the students, there are characteristics that being set but what are the most uh, characteristic that makes that student be unique? Diba? Namanasin yung database. Because every courses that you have is interconnected. As you can see here, the characteristics can be the fields of the data, uh, fields of your database. 'Di ba? Sa tables database, kabantay mo atong inyong activity before. We have a lot of tables, and every table has its own columns, and every row has a data. So kani siya, the things that we are talking about here, the characteristics are the names of the columns. What to see? So how can make this human to be distinct? Mm, by okay. As a human, it is what we call cannot be distinct. But if you make this human into an employee object, that is the time that you are going to make it a distinct employee out of that object employee. You will just add employee ID. That characteristics gives you a unique data for a particular employee because every one employee is one it's only one ID. That makes you unique. That is what we call primary key in database. Did you remember that? Kaya nga naman kay if name mga to ang to make it as a unique, remember that last name could have you have a lot the same last name for the particular person. You have also the same first name. So in order to make it unique, you have to make an characteristic or attribute that makes that employee unique, and that is an employee ID. The same thing that uh, you are students, so you have a lot of characteristics, but NERSO gives you a characteristic which is a student ID to make you unique among the others. Okay, nasabtan ninyo that character. So you can add characteristics also to make your object unique. Okay, the same thing that I have mentioned in your object database. Okay, so this another one, this object. So these three, we have a height, diameter, the variety, the years, the number of years, behavior, produce fruit, and bend. It's only the behavior of that particular tree. Okay, so are we already in the same page that object has two parts or we have characteristic and behavior. Okay, so any questions for that? Okay, okay. Others, are you still listening? Okay, okay. Thank you for that. Okay, okay. So this is the definition of object-oriented programming. So it is a programming paradigm, a programming way, a way of coding based on the concept of objects. Okay, remember objects. So objects which may contain data in the form of field, often as attributes or characteristics, and code in the form of procedure, often known as methods. So procedure or behavior, methods. So there are terms that we are going to look into because there are different terms but the same meaning. Like when we say data, can be pwede na siya attributes, characteristics, okay? Or fields. So dagang ngalan. Okay? So data na yung pasabot ana. And we can have methods. The methods can be have function or procedure or behavior. So how the object reacts, how the object works. So that is a behavior, methods, procedure, or we call it procedure, behavior, methods, function. So sa data po ta, we have data, fields, attributes, characteristics. So those data terminologies are the same. Okay, so there are the core concepts of OOP. We have abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism. Okay, so any questions so far? So I can proceed with these two. Any question? Okay, so we will proceed. Okay, this is the principles of the OOP. As mentioned, these are the principles: abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism. Okay, abstraction is a way of creating a simple model of a more complex real-world entities which contains the only important properties. Abstraction manages complexity of system by hiding internal details and composing it in several smaller systems. Okay, so as you can see, we have class human and class bank. Okay, so before na lang ta proceed ani no to make it much more to clarify. Arita dire. Okay, we will just define first what is class before ta kay nag-una man tatong class human class so to class human o class bank. So we go directly first sa class. So class is a template or blueprint that defines specific complex data type for creating objects. So meaning object-oriented programming deals with object, but before we create object there should be a class. Okay? So there will be no objects if there is no there will be no object if there is no class. So class is a blueprint of that object. So siya may blueprint. So as you like an example in here, this is the blueprint of a class car. Class car has a year, make, model. So this is the blueprint. Mura na, as you can see, di ba? Gama kag balay, something like that. Nagplano ka, you have see the blueprint ang imong plan. So in here, this is the plan. Okay? But in here, once you have already the plan, you can create many object uh, for that. Like you can have a car Camry, model Camry, we have model Camaro, we have model Benz, model Caprice o Caprice ni, and we have Sonata. Based on your model, based on your blueprint, you can have objects, several objects, and that object is a car. And that object is different to each other. Nana siya. So, mura ka gagama ka og model, ano gagama kag blueprint, plano. So that is a class. Out of a class, you can create objects of that class. You can have many objects as you want to. So the class have the attributes, the data, and also the behavior. Okay, in order to make an object, you have here that we call it the blueprint. So any question? Itong i-expound og taman? Wala ra. So, ini sa uban. Wala ra ba'y pangutana ang uban? Wala ra ba ang pangutana ang uban? So, wala ra. Okay, okay. So, meaning, for example, we have a class human. A class human can create object John, object Jill, and object Jan. Jack, sorry, Jack. So, out of a one class, you can create three humans. From one class, human, you can create three humans. That is three objects. Object Jan, object Jill, and object Jack. The same with here, we have a class bank. You can have object LBP, Land Bank of the Philippines, and object BPI, hmm, object PPI for your class bank. So meaning you should first create your class in order to create an object, and you can have many objects as you want to. Kuha, kuha. Any question? Now, that process, that creating object to the class without any manages complexity of system by hiding internal details and composing it several smaller system. This process is what we call abstraction. Why? Because subsystems, smaller system, that this object never really depend on this object, on that object. Okay? Abstraction is a way of creating a simple model of a more complex real-world entities which contains the only important properties. Also, what are the important properties of a class? It will be pop up also, or you can be used on your object. So, this process of creating objects to class can also we call use abstraction. Hmm? Any question? So, any question? Wala ba pangutana? Okay ra, so nakasabot what is abstraction. But we will go do it deeper. We will create it's easier to said than done. Manggod ngon sila. Nagsulti ra dire, siyon ra kayo. Okay, what when we create now a program like that, probably it's that makes us much more confused and much more sakit sa ulo. Right now, we are just introducing this one, learning on it. That is abstraction. Pero pag abot sa coding na, nanay magbugulbol. Unsaon ganito, unsaon ganito. Okay? Next is, since you know already the class, we have abstraction, another way of abstraction. Um, we have class person, class person, class job. So you can also you can combine two classes at the same time. Like for example, a person can seek, okay, you can, since you have a job, you can put in one together. In this class, you can put one object also for for binding to class in one object. That is also called an abstraction. Okay? So, pwede na, so since, okay, as you can see here, person, first name, last name, skills, job, okay? That job here is a class. So, meaning this person contains an a class also, or object for a particular class to be connected to whatever the company position of the salary of that particular object can be inherited or can be put here on the job. So it's less complexity. So you don't need to create job company here, position, salary. It is because you already have a class job. So all we need to do is just to include that class job into this particular um, on this data. Okay, because class is what we call a higher form of data type. So kaning class a data type gyapon siya pero higher form of data type katong integer, katong mga float, mga sa pa to, boolean. Those are data types. That is what we call primitive data types, basic data types. But when you class, you can have complex data inside of a class. So you can have here the class job is another included with the person class to be connected. So that is also one way of having abstraction. So later on, puhon-puhon, ato na siyang ma-encounter through coding. Okay? Now we have here, the next thing is we have called encapsulation. The wrapping of data and function together into a single unit is called encapsulation. This feature keeps the data safe from outside interference and misuse. This lead to a concept of data hiding. So that is one good benefit of using object-oriented programming. Okay, because your code is secured. You, as a class, it's up to you what level of control that you are going to use in order that class cannot be used to another class. It's up to you. Okay, when we say encapsulation, like igisulod, like kakita mo amoxicillin na tambal, 'di ba? Unsay naka-capsule siya. Meaning encapsulate meaning ang imuhang data and methods are inside of that capsule. 'Di ba? Mainom kag tambal, 'di ba? Mainom kag amoxicillin tungod kay naa kay mga something allergy or sa padira. When you drink that one, you don't need to remove the capsule and drink. All you need to do is to eat the capsule without knowing what is inside of that. The same thing in here. It is a class. You can see that that is a class in programming, but you don't need to know what is inside of that class. If you set that class into um, private protected, so you cannot know what is inside of that class. Your code is very secured. That is why some of the programmers tend to use object-oriented programming because of the control of the data that being shared through resources. So, munang nindot siya, secured siya sa OOP. That process is encapsulation. It's very easy to use it in here in OOP paradigm. So, naka-encapsulate siya. So, just remember what is encapsulation. Lantawaran ng amoxicillin, mefenamic, at pa man ang mga tambal dira na murang nakabutang sa capsule, solmiox, unsa pa dira. Wala, di ba? Wala ni mo lang tawa sa sulod. You just drink it and maulihan na ka. Okay, wala man siguro kag ingon inom nimo amoxicillin ni imong gihoho si imong baba ang katong kuan. Ikuha nimo isa capsule. Di ba pait? Di ba? So that's the purpose of encapsulation. Make it hide from the real world what is inside on that capsule. So OOP can have that one. Our variables and methods can be hidden inside the capsule, inside the cap, inside the class, and we call it encapsulation. Any question? Any question, guys? Okay, wala na. Wala na. Okay, next you have inheritance. That is the thing that I mentioned a while ago. You have inheritance. It is a mechanism where you can derive a class from another class for a hierarchy of classes that shares a sets of attributes and methods. Ano na siya, okay? We have class human, we have a dad, we have a mom. So you as the son can inherit, okay? Can be, okay, human class can create a dad. Human class can create also create a mom. If you're going to create a child or a son, okay, you can also create it from dad or create from it from mom. There are many ways how you're going to inherit data, inherit class through objects. So it is nice to have it because dili na ka magre-write of codes. All you need to do is you can have method overriding or method overriding or method overloading for you to really change the nature of that particular object so that para jud na para nimo. For example, class human, we have a set of information like name, last name, first name, middle name. Okay, so padira. So sa dad, we have here natay long nose, uh, sa manay sa dad, curly hair, or skin is dark, 'di ba? So whatsoever that are the things that on the dad, and we have here the mom, we have white, we have the complexity is white, straight hair, long nose, gihapon. Okay, so if you have the control in here, what is the inherited data you are going to put on your son? If you're going to override, okay, override the data from the dad, instead of having a dark color, you're going to use it as a white, and okay, use the data from the mom. So na lang. So you don't need not to code everything. There are some data is already been available. So all you need to do is to change some nature of it, and that is also the good benefit of inheritance that makes you less to code, not more on coding. Just know what are the data needed, and then if there you have need some data that for you naganahan ka, for example, all of them are black hair. Yang ganahan is red hair. So all we need to do is method override, create a method there that colored hair to have a hair colored a colored hair into whatever purpose imong ganahan. So maka-override ka. That is the good for inheritance. Okay? So that is for inheritance. And next is polymorphism. Okay, so one interface, multiple implementations. So polymorphism is an object-oriented programming, is the ability to create a property, a function, or an object that has more than one realization. Polymorphism is an ability to substitute classes that have common functionality in the sense of methods and data. You have learned driving one car, okay? You'll be able to drive on one any car. It doesn't depend on car brand or inner implementation, the same driver interference. So, ang polymorphism in programming, inana siya. Kabulo ka mo motor, di ba? Wala mo motor. Wala ka mo motor. XRM, Wave, unsa pa man na Smash, basta kung wala ko motor, whatever motor yung mong gamiton. That is what we call polymorphism. One interface can create multiple objects and multiple data. You don't need to problem anything, whatever it is. Basta kay, ang importante, you know that one and it will be implemented to the others. Kung kabulo ko mo motor, kabulo di ka mo motor. Whatever it is. Ug mapa-clutching mo na, gamay na lang imong kulang to make it work. Ug mapa-scooter pa mo na, gamay na lang po kulang para po ma-familiarize imong scooter. But it doesn't change the fact that if you know that to drive motorcycle, you cannot drive any of those. It doesn't depend the category of motorcycle or the brand of it. As long as you know how to ride the motorcycle, you can ride a motorcycle. It's a matter of okay time lang. So that is volume represent. So I have actual coding pa man. So I think it's already time. It's 12. So probably we will see each other again on Tuesday to realize what we are talking about, because this is only a small talk, more on talk. So we will now actual coding. How can we do create a class and create an object? How can we encapsulate? How can we inherit some data? How can we make polymorphism? Those are the things that we are going to work on. So that is the thing that we are also to more on actual coding man ni siya, dili man ni siya so resulti lang. So I guess we will continue on Tuesday to make it to uh, kanang masumpay atong lessons, and also to share with you how it being done in actual. Is it okay? Okay. Any questions? None? Okay. Okay, none. So see you on Wednesday. No, Tuesday, the same time. Okay. Okay ra ba? Okay, so before we end up, please tawagan nino. Please um turn on your camera for your our ato ang kuan tawagan ni screenshot. Sabi lang masakpan ni ron ang sa walay mga ligo. Okay. Okay. When in the count of three, just smile. Okay? Okay na ba? And 5, 4, you pause ha with 5 seconds kay pag smile yung mag-click mo man ko dire. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, smile. Okay. Okay, thank you for listening, guys. See you next meeting. Bye-bye. God bless. Bye-bye, bye-bye. Bye-bye, bye-bye. Bye-bye.